a couple different properties that are a little bit different than what we had been looking at. We had really been primarily in the first two episodes comparing what you can get in St. Louis that's rent ready on the market versus what you can get in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. That's more rent ready multifamily on the market. We had looked at some single families, some multifamilies. Now we wanted to kind of pull back the curtain on why buying a property that needs some work might be a really good way to end up with a rental property. And the reason we thought that was important to showcase is there's been many times in my amateur, right, novice investing career that I've wanted to buy a property because I knew I was going to get a good deal on it, but I just didn't know where to start in terms of what work should I do, how much is it going to cost me, how am I going to pay for it, who are the contractors. So just the work itself stopped me from taking what would have been a good deal, and every single time I've regretted it. And Craig has done really well with that in his career. And so I've always, Craig, between me and you, always looked up to Craig and what he has been able to accomplish in his career. I've learned a ton from Craig, so I'm really, really happy to have him on the show today. And I know a lot of times when people think of flipping a property, they think of getting in low, making those improvements, getting out quick, and recuperating their cash and taking it to the next job. Well, what if you could buy in low, make the improvements, get your cash out, and still have the property and rent that property out and make long-term cash flow, long-term equity capture? You can have your cake and eat it too. So Craig's going to walk us through that. But first and foremost, who the hell are you? What do you do? Who's your daddy and what do you do?
I'm just a dude. I'm just a guy
You're
that
a jag.
likes buying properties. And I like to buy and hold a lot. We do a lot of rehabs, sell those off, fix them up. That's fun. But the end game there really is to buy and hold properties, right? That's the ultimate exit plan, because you're creating that cash flow and you get that monthly money coming in, that mailbox money every month. And that gives you that financial freedom to not have to go out and do the grind every day, theoretically.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I think that's natural to you and me. We want to accumulate more and more properties over time, but I don't know that everybody knows that that's the goal, right? So you have an analogy that you use that I love. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Probably
what is
the
that?
401k analogy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. So the way our business is set up is we do a lot of things, but mainly we rehab and sell houses off, and we have some agent business, and that's what pays the day-to-day bills, right? That's the going out money. That's the paying my mortgage money. We've always viewed our rental portfolio as more of like a 401k. That's passive income. That's wealth generation for the future. And it worked really well. You've got to have a different mindset when you're looking at buying and holding properties, because it's a slower process. It's not as sexy, right? It takes time to build that up and make money kind of for the long run. It's like putting money into your traditional 401k. Like you don't feel those big gains right away, but over time, as things appreciate, and in the case of rental properties, as you get that debt service and you've got somebody in there who's paying that property off over time, things really start to get sexy at year 5, 6, 7 or longer, when you do it and you do it with the intention of holding and being in it for the long run. And when you set it up properly to make sure that property's doing well in the long run, right?
So you're giving up that initial windfall, but you're replacing it with cash flow over time.
Correct.
And for somebody like you need both, right? You need that income coming in every year to pay. That's what your flips do. You get that windfall that pays the bills for now, but you're also filtering in these long-term rentals to pay for your future.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, let's one of the feedback that we've got from this is that the information is really helpful, but we've gone really long. So this is one we can go through quickly today. Sure. So you've got 2 examples for us. One is a project that you're actively working on, and one that was recently right on the MLS that anybody could have went and grabbed. So let's go through yours first.
Right. Yeah, let me do a quick screen share here. Can you see our photos here, Mike?
I can. Speaking of not sexy.
Yeah, I know, right? I'm gonna speed to the end here real quick because I like to start on the outside.
Okay.
Let's see if I can do that. Oh, come on now. Why? Is it
Are you
not?
on a screen? Are you on just that picture or are you on a,
Yeah, I was on just that picture, but let me stop that share and I will pull up another folder here,
okay.
see if that works. Sorry, Zoom issues, right?
When did you buy that one?
We bought this one about 3 weeks ago, three and a
Okay.
half weeks ago.
So this is a newer project, not one that you're done with. You guys are just getting started on this, right?
Correct.
That's perfect. Okay. Yeah, you can walk us through the whole plan. So what, while you're pulling that up, what part of town are we in here?
This is in Hanley Hills. It's kind of north St. Louis County. If you're
Okay.
familiar with St. Louis, it is off of 170 and like St. Charles Rock Road. How's that? Did that work better?
I'm hoping people are joining and watching that are not from St. Louis, as well as people that are from St. Louis, because I really
Yep.
think, and I'm going to keep harping on this point, I really think when the investors that are out here with me in California who are struggling to find any property that cash flows, period,
Yep.
see the kind of investment that can be made in St. Louis. I really think that raises the St. Louis community up. So let's go through your thing here. So we're in North St. Louis County, right?
Yep. So
Okay.
you see that photo? It's the outside photo.
Yeah.
Exterior. Cool.
Mhm.
So this is, I mean, when we look at like what I'm looking for a rental, we prefer.
Sorry, we see your folder. I don't see the photo. I just see the photo that you have
The folder?
checked. Yeah.
Gotcha. Let me see if it'll let me stop that share and let's see. Don't know why that wasn't wanting to work that way. All right, now let's try this again. Now do you see the outside of the house?
Oh, there we go.
Yep, sweet. All
Yeah.
right, so when I'm looking for our rentals, really, we like single family rentals, and I know you've talked multifamily and everything else.
Mhm.
For us, single family is it's just easy. And it's easy because of a number of reasons. One, they're easy to get loans on, right? You can go to any lender and they're willing to lend on it by and large for the most part. Most people have all lived in houses, so we understand what goes in a house. We know kind of the ins and outs of a house. We know how to handle that. They're easy to fill when it comes time to put a tenant in it because you still have the preference by and large for most people that they want to live in a single family home. They don't want to be in an apartment. They don't want to have neighbors. That was exacerbated by COVID, right? Everybody wanted to get out of the cities and get out of that dense living and get into somewhere where they had some space. So they're very easy to fill. And the second part there is eventually you're going to want to move these, right? You're going to want to sell it. You're going to want to do something with it. It's very easy to sell these. There's a ton of buyers for these on the back end when you're done with it. So for us, they have a lot of advantages.
How many single families do you guys own?
We're about 20.
You're about 20. Okay.
Yeah, and gaining. I mean, we're constantly trying to add and move up. We sold some off in the height of the market just to take advantage of kind of high prices, right? Nobody was ever mad that they sold their assets at the height of a market. So that was kind of our thinking. We're like, we don't want to sell everything, but we will take advantage and pick those that have been either a pain or that have really, really good equity, but the rents aren't quite where we wanted them, and move those to be able to get some capital back and kind of hedge our bets, so to speak, not knowing what we were going to roll into. But yeah.
So give us the Tinder profile on this one. How many bedrooms, baths, square feet?
So the quick Tinder profile on this one is 3 bedrooms, 1 bath, 1 car garage, full basement, unfinished basement, which I prefer because finished basements can be a pain in the butt. If you have a leak or a sewer backup or whatever, it's just
They can hide things, can't they?
Yeah, and they hide things.
Mhm.
So when they're unfinished, there's not much that's going to be hidden. It's in a good neighborhood that had solid comps for the surrounding area compared to the surrounding area, especially. And that's when you drive through that neighborhood, a lot of the houses are pretty well maintained. They're not every single house is kind of a bombshell and they look great. However, by and large, for the most part, you can tell that it's a good mix of owner occupants and with some rental kind of splattered in there. So
Okay.
that was the main draw for us. Outside of the price, we were able to pick it up at a price that we really couldn't refuse.
What price was that?
We picked this one up for 54,000, I believe.
Nice.
We got a
Okay.
pretty good deal on it. Yeah.
Okay.
ARV. So it's going to be worth about anywhere from 105 to 115, depending on the appraiser and who's walking through it and what they're looking at.
Okay.
But we're confident on that price point.
So walk us through what you're having to do and how much it's going to cost.
Yeah, so on the outside, we don't have to do much. I mean, it's
Yeah,
got
that
a
looks
good
pretty
roof on
solid.
it. It's got a good roof on it. It's an all brick house. There's a little bit of vinyl siding on the garage. And then it's got a small addition on the back that has some older asbestos siding, but it's in good shape and that stuff takes paint like a champion, honestly. So we tend to leave it there and don't touch it if we don't have to and just paint it.
Okay.
Windows are a little bit older, but they're all functioning and operable and like everything works. So there's no real expense there. We're just doing a little bit of yard cleanup, rake the leaves, trim the trees up a bit, and then get rid of all the junk. I wasn't thrilled with the handicap, like wheelchair access ramp that was there, but we come across them pretty often. People age in place, and a lot of times they'll move out or they'll move into nursing homes, and then the family inherits the house and they sell them, and that's where we pick them up.
So let me challenge that for a second. Doesn't that increase the attractiveness of for potential renters? Doesn't that open up your pool a little bit if you have that handicap accessibility?
Yep, potentially, and we're going to leave it there until we really would need to get rid of it.
What's the
Mainly
detriment?
because-
Just maintenance?
Yeah, maintenance. And we don't know if county or city or wherever, in this case, when we go through an occupancy inspection, we don't know if they're going to hit on that and say, hey, that's going to need to go. If it does, okay, we'll get rid of it, because we don't know who put it in, how, when, what permits or whatnot. So
Yeah.
we'll leave it there. But getting
Okay.
back to your point, this could help us find an ideal tenant for ourselves, right?
Mhm.
Somebody who wants to age in place but isn't ready to go into assisted living, who says, hey, I need a spot where I can be for the next 5, 7, 10 years.
Yeah.
And this is easy to get into. It already has the ramp. It's 3 bedrooms. Like, I can make this work. That's a great tenant. You get
Right.
1 or 2 people who are in that position that want to live together that aren't going to go anywhere. Because our
Right.
biggest expense as landlords and property owners is turnover.
Turnover.
By far and large, our biggest expense is turnover. Maintenance doesn't even really come anywhere near to that.
I'm
So
living
the
that right
most-
now.
The more I can avoid turnover, if I can get my average tenant to squeak out another 2 or 3 years, that's huge for me. That means I don't need to get in and freshen up paint and do other things and have a gap of a month or so to place another tenant in there, where I'm missing that monthly rent.
Absolutely. All right. What else we got?
Let me blast through some photos. Just
Sure.
some additional photos out here. I mean, it's pretty clean, easy front yard, easy backyard. Nobody's gonna have any complaints on it. Let me buzz back to the front, because I did this backwards. I photoed the inside of the house and then I photoed the outside of the house, which I don't normally do. So we're at the end here. And we will come back through these, so don't worry.
Okay.
Get all the way to the front. Living room. So this one does have a good sized living room and a separate dining room, but the kitchen is kind of small. From a rental standpoint, I don't mind that the kitchen's small, because that means less money on cabinets and counters and the expensive parts of a house.
Sure.
As long as it's comparable to the rest of the subdivision that's there, I'm completely okay with that.
But that carpet's got to go.
Carpet's got to go.
New
Good thing about
paint.
these houses is this age range is probably built 1940 to mid 1950s. This style house is all over St. Louis.
Yeah.
We find these in North County. We find a lot of them down here in South County.
South County. Yeah.
Yep. So this is, think post World War II construction boom. That's when this house was built. That's why there's so dang many of them in St. Louis. But so underneath is hardwood floors. We'll yank the carpets up and we'll refinish hardwood. I don't like having any carpet in any of our rentals, because I've never had a tenant that's actually taken care of it well enough that it's survived after 3 or 4 years. And when you're talking $250, $275 a square foot to replace carpet and pad every single time, that adds up every turnover, right? Versus if I can pull out the carpets and refinish hardwood for $350 a square foot, maybe I pay a little bit more on that first upfront run, but I don't have to refinish hardwood every turnover for every tenant. It just wears better. Plus, tenants like going in and seeing that there's hardwood there.
Yeah.
So
And that's a good example of a long-term mentality. You're going to make
Yep.
it more expensive for yourself up front, but you're just not going to have to deal with it over the long term.
exactly.
So what are we talking for paint and carpet?
This house painted with trim and everything else, you're probably $2,000, 2,500 on paint. And then for refinishing floors, you're another, I would say, I don't know, call it $2,500. to
Okay.
refinish the floors in the house. We've got some areas that don't have hardwood, which will go back with a luxury vinyl tile. That's waterproof. It's tough as nails. Like it takes wear like a champion. So we don't have to worry about tenants tearing it up. And again, that's one of those where you spend just a little bit more. Don't get the cheapest version of that because it doesn't hold up as well, but it's a good product to put in.
All right.
The
So
other thing we do is
we're in
we-
for about 60 between acquisition cost, paint and carpet so far, right? Just kind of tallying as we
Yep.
go. Okay.
Yep. I don't have to do any windows. I don't have to do anything crazy in this one. So we'll yank the blinds down, like the window blinds, leave the valance, leave the shades. If there's a ceiling fan in one of our rentals, we get rid of it. My motto is I don't want to have anything with a motor because motors break down and those are moving parts. So
Mhm.
we'll do just flush ceiling lights. And if a tenant comes back, they're like, well, we really wish we had a fan, they can go and they can buy a floor fan that plugs into the wall and
Yeah.
they can push air that way. It's just one of those things that we found over years, they don't get taken care of. You come back after 3 to 5 years, there's dust bunnies dangling off the top because I haven't done anything with it. It's just anything I can do that eliminates maintenance and headache for myself down the run, we're going to try to do that.
And it still leaves the tenants options. It's just, if you
Yes.
leave it there, it's your problem. If they bring it themselves, it's their problem.
Yep, you got it.
All right. What else we
Sorry,
got?
That's dining room. Again, we're getting rid of that fan. I'm not painting my doors. They're fine for this area. And
Doors
this
look good, yeah.
So nothing's being done there. We'll refinish the floors. Kitchen, remember I said was pretty tiny.
Yeah.
So there's not a lot we're gonna need to do here. We'll
No.
probably change out the range. Refrigerator.
You're gonna
will
get
be
rid of that
okay.
vintage range?
Yeah,
That's cool looking.
and again, it probably works. I haven't tested it, but it probably works. And you could get away with keeping it, but it's gonna go sooner or later.
Yeah, it
So I'd
matches the
rather
kitchen
take-
so well.
Yeah, it's more comfortable for me to take that upfront hit now than it
Yeah.
is to have a tenant call me in 9 months or a year and a half and say, hey, guess what? We need a new range. That
So-
for some reason, that expense hurts so much more at that point in time than it does up front right now. So I just would rather get rid of it and be done with it.
It makes total sense because it's upfront investment versus maintenance. Maintenance is a hassle, something you want to reduce, but you kind of know what your upfront investment is. And
Yep.
it's just a more known quantity at that point that is in your calculations. You're already comfortable with it. It makes total sense.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll get rid of the old wood counter and just do a nicer Formica countertop. Those are pretty cheap. Cabinets will stay. They're original like sheet metal cabinets. They're tough as nails. They've obviously made it 60, 70 plus years so far. Now, granted, the person who lived here took really good care of them. However, they're not going to be torn up by your average tenant. They can be just cleaned and wiped down.
All right.
The
So
floors
what
will
are,
go back with an LVP. Go ahead, Mike.
no, I was going to say, so what are we racking up here in this area?
I mean, maybe $1,000, $1,500,
Okay.
not including the floors.
Okay.
So you're pretty cheap. I don't believe there's any garbage disposal here. That's the other thing is I don't include garbage disposals in any of our rentals.
Okay.
Again, that's an item with a motor. And that's just an invitation for people to be shoving stuff down the drain. I don't want that phone call on Thanksgiving that, hey, my drain stopped up because we shoved 8 pounds of potato peels down it when I shouldn't have been. And now we need somebody to come fix it, right?
And now that's your problem. Yep.
Exactly. And now that's my problem.
Right. And you
little
self-manage
exhausting
all your
here.
properties to that
What's
point,
that?
right? I said to that point, you're self-managing all your properties.
Yeah, we do self-manage. Especially if you're in town, I recommend to do that for at least the first 1 or 2, and maybe for a year or so, just so you know what that's like and what that process is, and you can get an understanding for what those phone calls are going to be. You
Good
don't
point.
have to, but
Mhm.
quite honestly, if you just add 4 people to your phone book, you can eliminate probably 95% of your phone calls to where you don't even need to go out there. If you have a good plumber, a good handyman, an HVAC guy, and an electrician, with just those 4, you could tackle probably 95 to 99% of the calls you're going to get.
Okay.
And then from there, it's just maintenance items, right?
Yeah.
So just small things, getting through there once every 6 months to a year and see if anything's needed. Judging the tenant and like making sure the tenant's calling you if stuff happens.
Mhm.
For us, water's a big issue. So if I tell them if there's anything water related, call me immediately and let me know. Make
Okay.
sure you're checking underneath your sinks for leaks and drains and all of that good stuff. Other items outside of that, the next big one would be like HVAC. If If the heat goes down when it's 15 degrees out, that becomes an issue because pipes could freeze, right? So having that HVAC guy on call who can get over there pretty quickly, that's the next biggest item for us. And then outside of that, there's a lot of stuff that can just wait, right? Hey, this doorknob fell off on my closet. Well, that's not an immediate thing. That can be scheduled, and a maintenance guy can get there in a day or two and you'll be okay.
We don't know anything about 15-degree days out here in Northern California. You're gonna have to explain.
Yeah,
what
you
that
guys don't. That's a Midwest thing. There's
Yeah.
a lot of people experience of 15-degree days with a whole lot of snow right now.
And I think that's why it's important to talk to an expert if you're going to do, well, first of all, anytime, right? But if like what I'm talking about, if you're a California investor and you're wanting to invest in St. Louis, there's a whole lot of things that you've never considered that are daily considerations in St. Louis. And so that's why I think this is helpful for folks. But we can move on to the next room. What else we got?
So that's just another shot of the kitchen, other direction. Let me blow this up. This is kind of just another addition off the back, kind of a quasi breakfast room, dining room
Okay.
with a third bedroom to the right that was added on at some point in time. So this would be your third bedroom. I'm sorry, I'm back in the normal part of the house. This is one of the bedrooms in the original house.
Okay.
At some point, they did some built-ins here for additional closet. I'm not going to go through the effort to yank those out. Those are going to stay. Carpet goes, hardwood's refinished, fan goes away to where it's just a normal ceiling fan. Larger of the bedrooms, again, decent size, carpet, light fixture, remove the old lady blinds, paint,
Mhm.
and you're good to go.
Yeah. Can't wait to see the afters on this.
Yeah, it'll be pretty. I mean, it'll be simple. It just clean and straightforward and hard wearing is kind of what we go for on these. So don't expect like some massive reveal because we're not, you got to keep in mind, we're at a rent rate where like people just want clean and safe and comfortable. Like for
Yeah, let me,
$1,100 a month, that's what you're targeting, right?
I'll start working on some of the financials as you're showing the pictures too. So you're thinking
Yep.
monthly rent. What's my monthly rent here in this area? Once you're
Call
done.
it about $1,100.
Okay.
So from a bathroom standpoint, there's not much we need to do. The tile's all in really good shape. We'll address like the caulk joints between the tub and the tile. Make sure that all of our fixtures are working and not leaking and everything's solid on that front. Change out a light fixture. We always make sure that there's an exhaust fan in the bathroom. So when they're taking hot showers and the water's steaming, they can turn the exhaust fan on, get that hot, moist air out of there. You got to have GFIs in your bathroom. So we'll address that. But even like the old tub is still in really good shape. Sometimes we need to glaze them if they're looking kind of ratty. And
That one looks,
but by and large, like this bathroom's pretty clean and functional and we don't need to do much. Again, big win on our part that it's not going to require a lot of maintenance
yeah.
or a lot of changeover. This is that third bedroom that was added on. So, I mean, just to get back to like how the older generation lived, carpet was the premium back in their day, right?
Yeah.
Let's throw 50-cent carpet squares over pre-finished like hardwood floors, like actual real hardwood floors. That's just what
Yeah.
they did. So that's going to be lumped in and that'll be refinished. Get rid of the fan. We probably won't, I won't even paint these walls. It's just a faux wall panel. And mainly because if I paint it, paint tends to not to stick too well to that slick surface. You'd have to prep it really well. But it's not needed, right?
Yeah. So I'm not hearing any true heavy lifting on this one. This is paint and flooring and maybe some appliances so far.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Light
But-
fixtures.
But it's like, it's substantial cosmetic stuff. So it's all throughout the house. It's not just
Right.
flooring in one room. So you've got a whole house worth of paint and flooring, some appliances. Anything bigger than that?
We've got a plumbing stack that we need to do in the basement.
Okay,
That's
so you've
not-
got some
That
internal.
cast iron stack, which we'll kind of get down to, but
PV. You're gonna
furnace,
replace that with a
AC,
PVC?
water heater are all pretty decent. So
Okay. So kind of totaling up as you went, we've got $1,100 monthly rent. Is there more, or do you want me to switch to the financials?
we'll finish out real quick on photos. So basement, this is what I like to see in a basement, preferably.
Not
Open,
much.
clean, not finished.
Yeah.
I don't want anything down here, to be quite honest. It should be just storage on a rental like this, because if this ever leaks, basements are notorious leakers, especially in St. Louis, unless they have a drain tile system and a sump pit. If this ever leaks, I have no worries. It's going to go right to the floor drain. We'll be good to go.
What about the
Although-
argument that you could get more rent if that basement was finished and maybe there was an extra room there?
Yes, there is an argument that you could get more rent, but the amount of money that I'm getting from a rental standpoint, like my rent increase doesn't match the headache and the risk of something going on down here
Mhm.
that I would have to take care. It's just, for me, it's not worth it. And if you look at what all of the big hedge fund investors do, like the guys that are coming into St. Louis and the other towns in the Midwest that are buying hundreds and hundreds of houses, all of them really prefer to not have finished basements as well. And it's 100% just because it's a maintenance item.
So
They don't
when you're
wanna
in the
have to take that
long-term game, it's more about risk mitigation than it is rent optimization. Is that fair?
Correct. Yep,
Interesting.
exactly. We just can't justify the rent cost to offset the price that it would cost me to actually go through and finish.
Okay.
Now, if I was in a high dollar per square foot area, and if I was chasing some really high dollar rents, absolutely. But if you're in that scenario, you're not doing what we're doing to this house, right? You're replacing an entire kitchen, you're updating the entire bathroom. Like your renter that you're searching in that scenario has a completely different list of demands and desires than the renter who we're targeting for this house.
Which you said is just clean, safe,
Yep,
simple.
clean, safe, comfortable.
Okay.
That's
Cool.
it. There's always electric down here that we got to address. The homeowners are notorious for running little switches and receptacles and whatnot. So we'll do that. I've got guys on staff that'll spend some time doing that. So that'll probably be $500 or $600. It won't be a ton of money, but it'll have to be sorted out. And then
Okay.
we're getting rid of stuff like this sink doesn't need to be here. So that'll be removed and capped.
Okay.
All the junk that doesn't need to be there goes.
Okay. So we are 54, is that what you said, acquisition cost?
Yep.
And then what's our total bill on the rehab?
We're probably going to be right around like 15 grand.
Okay.
With clean out, like what you don't see here is we spent $1,000 on cleaning it out, getting rid of a bunch of junk, right? We're gonna have to do a stack, so there's $1,200 to $1,500. That's the plumbing stack right here for everybody's in California that hasn't really ever seen one because they don't have a basement.
Yeah.
That's what that guy is. Cast iron, it's old, it's rusted. And then there's just a bunch of other miscellaneous items that come up on the list that need to be addressed. So all in construction, call it 15 grand. So we're just under 70 at that point. Throw in some hold cost and some other miscellaneous. Now we're at, call it low 70s, like 72.5 on a house that's worth 100 to 110-ish, maybe a little bit more on a good day. So for us, the big thing there is this fits the BRRRR model perfectly to where we can be all in for, call it 70% loan to value, take this, refi it out, have $0 out of pocket, yet we're cash flowing $200, $300, $400 a month. And we've gained equity of 20 or 30 grand, but I have $0 in the deal. Right.
Let's actually look at that. So coincidentally, pure coincidence, you're leaving this call and you're going to Core Properties meetup and you guys are talking about what tonight?
The BRRRR method.
You're talking about the BRRRR method. So what is, real quick, for those who haven't heard, what is the BRRRR method? Because you're right, man, this is the quintessential BRRRR example here. So walk me through it.
So BRRRR method is just, it just stands for buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. There's a lot of R's there, right?
Yeah.
But essentially what you're doing is you're preserving your capital. So if you have, let's say you have 25 grand and you want to start building a rental portfolio, you can use that 25 grand and go buy one house and put 20 grand down on it and get your numbers to cash flow. However, what do you do when you want to go to the next property, right? It's a lot harder to save up another 25 grand and go do it again.
Yeah.
The beauty of the BRRRR method is you're preserving that 25, 30 grand or whatever it is that you have to work with. And you're just rinsing and repeating that same process every time. You're reusing that same down payment. but you're getting it back at the end of every deal, so you can build them up that much faster without depleting your cash reserves, the money that you have available to use to buy rentals.
So you can turn $25,000, redeploy it infinitely, and turn it into 20 rental properties if you play your cards right. Now,
Yep.
I know for you and I, it hasn't worked exactly like that, of course, but the crux of it all is finding the property for a good enough price where you
Sure.
where you can refinance out of it. That's the biggest challenge with the BRRRR method, right?
Yep.
Is finding a property for cheap enough, low enough compared to ARV that after you've done your improvements, you can refinance out. So this is a really good example, and you've obviously done a good job with this one. So following along with all the numbers you gave me, and being conservative with annual rent increases, being really conservative with annual vacancy, that's 1 month a year. You're not going to turn this one over every year.
Yep.
The numbers on this one are just too good.
Yeah. And that's what it gets ridiculous when you realize that when you get a deal where you are $0 out of pocket at the end of it, that's when the numbers start looking ridiculous because you have that infinite return and whatnot.
Cash on cash return is really and truly almost infinite, but even on the most conservative calculation is 1,600%. So that is not a return that you're going to get anywhere else, man, like literally anywhere else these days. But running through the numbers, we had $1,100 in rent, and it's a little tricky running this model on the BRRRR method. So I basically had to take the loan amount of the refinance, not of the original loan, and set it all the way to 75. And I buffered it, you said low 70s, I buffered it all the way to 75, which is, roughly 70% of your ARV, which you should be able to get. And I'm not going to go through every number here, but you can kind of watch the replay and see the numbers that are in here. Historical appreciation, very conservative. And look what you're getting here. And this is just looking at the first 10 years. Again, you're cash flowing immediately, which is increasingly rare these days, unless you buy at a really low price.
Yep.
Your cumulative 10-year cash flow ends up being 65,000. You are getting a 250% return in the first 10 years. You are just the annual cash flow is increasing and increasing and increasing, and obviously your monthly payment doesn't. You've gained roughly $25,000 in appreciation over 10 years, even at a small forecasted appreciation rate. And really, it's more than that because you've increased the equity outside of appreciation too, right? So this is your appreciation is one thing, but you had an initial immediate equity capture.
Correct.
In addition to this appreciation that happened immediately, right? So this is underestimating your overall return because the program is really not set up to handle BRRRR. So everything you see here is actually better in real life, which is ridiculous. So you're making about your infinity. There you go, infinity ROI, because you've got all your money back and you've made 90 grand in 10 years. And you really have zero money deployed at the end of the day. You put your blood, sweat, and tears into it. And that's pretty awesome. So that is what we're talking about here. And now you've got another example of a property that is on the market and available to buy.
Well,
hypothetically, although it went under contract this morning, right? So it was, as of yesterday, this was available, but today it's pending. So why don't you walk us through that one real quick?
Yep.
So this kind of shows you the high end of what you can do in terms of ROI using the BRRRR method. Now this next one is going to be more readily available for the average investor.
Yes. So this is going to be a scenario where you want to be a little bit more passive and you want to be a little bit less hands-on, to where you don't want to find one that's trashed and you don't want to have to do a ton of work, but you're okay saying, hey, maybe I got to replace a roof or a furnace.
Exactly.
Maybe I find a painter and they paint it. Some
Yep.
of those smaller lipstick items.
Mm-hmm.
Ideally, in this scenario, like I still want to try to target the 1% rule, but it's getting very, very hard to do that. And what I mean by the 1% rule is I want my all-in cost to be, I want my rent after my all-in cost to be 1% of the value, right? So in this particular case, if this house is 185 grand, ideally, I would want my rents to be $1,850 a month. Now that's getting extremely hard to find, especially when you go to the market, but it gets a little bit easier when you say, okay, I've got a little bit of money to put down. Maybe I've got 15, 20, 30K that I need to put somewhere other than the stock market, because that worries me a little bit. I'm terrified of the stock market because I don't know enough about it. And quite honestly, I can't get the returns in the stock market, obviously, that I can by buying real estate. So I just haven't really dabbled in it.
Mhm.
But these deals are still out there. They're just a bit harder to find, and you've got to be able to really sift through the weeds to find them.
Okay.
Mike gave me a couple days and I found this one, which kind of made sense if you wanted to go that route. This is still in St. Louis. It's in South St. Louis County. This is in Bayless. It's an area that we like to buy. Bayless, Afton. Those areas for us are kind of bread and butter. A lot of our rentals are in that area. Good school district. You'll notice the house is by and large kind of the same. That
Yeah.
smaller 3-bedroom brick ranch. Just straight, simple, clean house, right? There's
Better
nothing
landscaping.
to this. It doesn't have a garage. I would love for it to have a garage, but at the end of the day, that's not a deal killer for me. That just means there's less stuff that the tenant can pile into it. And 90% of the people out there don't park their car in the garage anyways. It's just a collector for junk to land.
So rent differential, first of all, what are we talking about rent in this one? You're right, roughly same size house, different area. What's the
Yep.
jump up in rent here?
This one's probably around $1,550 a month
Wow. Okay.
is what I would predict. Yeah.
And if it did have a garage, what would it be?
You're probably 15, you're probably around 1,600. You could maybe push it a little bit.
So the garage is a lot like the basement, the perceived value of the property. If it has a garage or has a finished basement is high to me, but for a rental property, it's not moving the needle enough in terms of.
It's not moving it a ton. I mean, where it will really help you is when you go to rent it, you'll probably have a better pool of renters just because it has a garage.
Sure.
But from a value standpoint, like I'm not placing a ton of value on a garage. I'm not saying this thing has a 2-car garage, so I'm adding $200 a month. It's really not happening. It's not working that way. That's rarely the case. At least
All right,
that's how
walk us
I
through this one.
evaluated and kind of what we've found in the past. But
All right.
this one's just so nice and clean from the outside. Like there's no big trees around that I got to worry about. The roof looks pretty new. The gutters look fairly new. All the brick is in great shape. Landscaping is landscaping with rentals. You're never going to find a tenant who really wants to take care of it. So we do as minimal as possible on landscaping. But
this
from the
one just came with it.
outside, yeah, from the outside, like everything's good.
So
Lawn can be
one of the
mowed.
reasons you picked this one that we were talking before we went live here, it was on the market for a while, right? So
Yeah, it was
how
on
long
the
was it
market for 90+ days.
and it went under contract the day before we're showing it to everybody.
Right. Well, they
Um,
did a price drop, which kind of put me onto it.
I see. Okay.
And that price drop was enough for somebody to act on it.
So what would you have offered on this one? Just so I can work on my numbers over here.
If I would have loved to pick this one up for like 170, 175.
Okay.
If I could get it at that price point, that would have been pretty good.
And it's listed at 185. So I'll run numbers at 180, a little higher than you wanted, a little lower than they listed.
Yep.
Oh, keep going. Sorry.
So it's a 3-bedroom. One of the bedrooms is a little bit small, but that's okay. Generally, what we found in this area is we're not getting a lot of like big families down in this area. This is like your starter entry home for people who are going to rent. Young couple, maybe they have one kid, or maybe it's just the two of them, or it might even just be an individual, or they're downsizers and they don't have any kids. We're seeing a lot of that. But you're going to come in here, you're going to do some painting, get rid of everything that doesn't match. Every one of our rentals looks the same. Every one of them has the same paint color, paint
Agreeable
finish.
gray.
Yeah. Well, actually on rentals, it's incredible white.
Whoa. Okay. Wow.
We did agreeable gray forever, but things are trending lighter, and that lighter color just makes it feel a little bit bigger and more open.
All right. We're now disagreeable. Okay.
Yeah, we're now disagreeable gray.
Hey, I like that dresser.
Yep. Yeah. They fit a lot of stuff in there. But I mean, there's really nothing to do in the bathroom.
Nice
here other than
bathroom.
make sure everything works and is clean and ready.
Yeah.
Tiles fine, shower door is awesome because now there's not a bunch of water spilling on the floor whenever tenants are showering. Kitchen is in good shape. Like I would really need to do not hardly anything in the kitchen. Maybe make my appliances match if I wanted to spend a little bit of money.
Yeah. Again, probably less of a big deal for renting than it is
Yeah.
for,
Less of a big deal for renting. Mainly, it would be me looking at the appliances, saying, how old are these, and do I want to have to deal with a headache maybe in the future?
okay.
Good sized living room, separate dining room. Like any normal person, 2 or 3 family would be comfortable in this house as long as they don't have a ton of stuff.
Boy, similar floor plan to the other one, huh?
Very similar, right? Like I said, all these houses that were built from the 40s to the mid 50s, almost 60s, they're all right in that 800 to 1,000 square foot range, 3 bedrooms, 1.5 bath. Like that's it. When people, getting off on another tangent, when people say they don't build any starter homes anymore, they don't build any affordable homes anymore, what they really mean is nobody's building this type of house anymore, right?
Yeah, the 3-2 under
Because people don't want
1,500.
that.
Yeah,
That's just not what sells. If we're gonna put a shovel in the ground, it's not gonna be for 1,000 square foot house,
no,
especially
I
in
get that.
these areas.
Sure.
But again, unfinished basement, they just threw a bunch of rugs down here. So from an ownership standpoint, all of that gets cleaned out and there's nothing to worry about in the basement. It's just storage. Washer dryer hookups, that stack's already been replaced, so I don't have to have that expense. I can't really tell from the furnace and the AC, but it doesn't look like it's ancient.
And for those that aren't familiar with, again, St. Louis history, you're looking at the shift from the original cast iron stacks to now your PVC
Yep.
stacks, right? Because the
Yep.
cast iron stacks always fail.
Yeah, they rust, they fail, they have issues. We get rid of them when we can.
Mhm.
But I have a rule of thumb where depending on how old the house is, that's the percentage chance that I'm going to need to redo the stack and have issues with the cast iron lateral underneath the slab. So if the house is 70 years old, 75 years old, there's a 75% chance that I'm going to have an issue with that stack or that lateral.
So in your mentality, you would just do it now.
Yeah, unless it's in really good shape.
Okay.
Some of those cast iron stacks they were better taken care of, and for some reason they held up better. But by and large, we usually get rid of them.
Okay.
Again, accept that cost now rather than later. But
So all I'm hearing really is paint. And I saw a couple interior doors that you could replace, but didn't really have to.
yeah,
Anything else here on the exterior?
I would always plug, even on the cleanest of house, at least 2 or 3 grand that you're probably going to do, just because there's going to be small stuff that pops up.
You definitely
But
have to paint this one. So
Yeah, you got to paint it.
what are we looking at paint? 2,500, 3,000?
Yeah. Maybe probably less on this one. If you don't even need to do baseboards or ceiling, you could get away with a couple grand.
Okay. So let's say 2,500 to buffer it.
Yep.
All right, let's jump over the numbers then. Is there any, okay, there's a little bit
Yeah.
more, just a
Just-
nice yard.
Simple backyard.
Yeah.
We
nice
get rid
though.
of as much stuff that would cause overgrowth as possible, but that's it.
And it's too bad this one sold. Well, let's see if it's too bad or not, because at 180, we're violating the 1% rule here. So let's see,
Yep.
is it still worth it if we can find a similar property, which I've seen a lot of these type of properties come on the market. I haven't seen them sit 90 days like this one did. I wonder why it's sat.
Yeah, I'd have to get in and find out.
All right, so running through 1550, and again, the same assumptions on all of this. 180 purchase price, real taxes, estimate on home insurance. We've plugged in a monthly maintenance number here. With the way Craig runs his properties, you really probably aren't going to have this, at least for the first couple of years, because he's fixing everything up front. This one, there's not a lot to do. Let's go minimum 100 or minimum 20% down here. And you're looking at minimal but positive cash flow in year one. And if you've seen our previous episodes of this, that one of the biggest mistakes I made was looking just at year one cash flow and not long-term cash flow.
Yep.
So really for me, anything that's positive in year one cash flow is a deal worth looking at. It doesn't mean it's automatically a deal worth doing, but it's a deal worth diving into further. You're still going to have over 100% cumulative cash on cash return in the first 10 years. Your cash flow goes up and up and up each year because of rent increases. And of course, this all changes. By the way, we're still in the environment where these numbers get better if rates go down, and you can buy at today's prices and refinance into tomorrow's interest rates if rates go down. But we're not accounting for any of that, mind you. This is just normal. Actually, I lowered the rent appreciation estimates to be conservative. I've raised the vacancy rates to be conservative, and still we're positive on cash flow. and we're increasing by year 3 to 4, we're, clearing $3,000 a year. And we're gaining appreciation over 10 years. This is a little bit more appreciation than the last house because we're at a higher price point. We are amortizing our principal down. Even if we don't refinance, we're still gaining this much. So your total return on investment, if you bought this property at 180 and rented it out at 1550 with the existing assumptions that are eating into your profits, even after all that, you've still profited $122,000 after 10 years, and your ROI is 320%. So this was a good one, Craig.
Yeah.
Obviously, the first one was an A+. But what's
For
this
being
one?
able to find it on the market, like which is getting really, really hard to do.
Yeah.
I was surprised to be able to kind of come across it, which that just goes to show you they're still out there. You just got to do a little digging and you got to be able to act fast. I will say that, I mean, that vacancy that you have plugged in here, from our experience, that's pretty high.
Yeah.
Our average tenant is 3 years easy in these single family homes, especially right now and over the last like 2 to 3 years. What we're seeing, we're really only losing tenants that are moving out and buying houses. And right now it's really hard for them to find properties. So it's taking longer for them to actually do that. And
So I need to go to all 20 of your rentals and leave my business card there. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah. I mean, you can. We do that. We market to all of our tenants and say, hey, if you need to buy a house, we're agents also, right?
That's a
We
great idea.
try to make money as best we can. But just saying, like, your average annual vacancy on that high on a single family is being very conservative.
Yeah, I want to show people that, hey, worst case scenario, this is still a good deal. But if we play with this vacancy, and you're right, a property like that should not turn over every year. Every single family home that we have in that area, and my wife and I have had 3 over the years, we're talking once every 3 or 4 years too. But let's say if we play with that and bring it down to the lowest estimate it'll let me go to, which is half of that. What does that do to the numbers? It doubles them. It not mathematically, that's not formulaic, but it doubles the cash flow in this case and brings your overall return to 130,000, which where's that? 347%. So it's another 20% ROI. That's wild.
Yeah.
So if the first one was an A+, what's this one? In
What's
terms
that?
of if the first one was an A+, obviously do it. What's this one?
I'd say it's a solid B, especially if you're trying to be a little bit more passive and you don't want to have that much hands-on. Like, I could see if you're an out-of-town investor and you want to find a good property at a good price point, that's a solid house and will give a good return. That's kind of a no-brainer.
And you can
That's
find
what I'm looking
people
for.
something like this on the market today.
What's that?
I said, and you think you could find something exactly like this in terms of the overall deal structure on the
think so.
market today, listed on the
Yeah, I think if you're committed and you say, hey, I want to look for a month or two, you're gonna eventually find something like that. Especially as we roll into the spring and we start to see some inventory pick up, that's where you're really gonna kind of start to see some motion going.
One thing I
Also-
forgot to highlight is how much money is coming out of your bank account. Down payment, renovation cost, 38,500. So call it 40 grand out of pocket on this one in order to achieve these results.
Yep.
And if you're in California watching this, you're like, what? But this is what I'm talking about.
Yeah. I think St. Louis is a gem especially for rentals and cash flow and being able to do what we do.
Yeah.
The price that we can pick up properties is pretty ridiculous. And we didn't get into like way North County, Florissant, Hazelwood, and some of those areas where when I travel, people are surprised when I tell them, hey, we can buy houses that people can actually live in for 40 or 50 grand. If you want to go to the right area, you could find a house that is livable for 40 or 50 grand. And that blows people's minds.
Yeah.
Now you're getting into a different area and a different tenant base, and there's a lot of other things that go with that.
Mhm.
But we have that kind of housing stock at that price and affordability that other cities don't have. That's really the main benefit for St. Louis is affordability and
Absolutely.
good rent rates.
Well, thanks for laying this all bare for us, man. I appreciate that. I know you've got another event to go to here, so I'm going to go ahead